All right, everybody. This is In Liberty and Health, episode number 182. I've been really looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. I have one of the great unifiers with me today. But first, shameless plugs. Make sure you go check out tigerfitness.com for all your supplements, and also LMNT for the world's best electrolytes, and go to foxandsonscoffee.com and use code Kyle at checkout to get yourself some absolutely phenomenal coffee from a local business, much like my old man's. We preach localization, decentralization as libertarians all the time, so make sure you go check that stuff out. So without further ado, let's go. What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, there we go. I think I got that all right. I'm a little shaky on StreamYard. Anyways, Mike Jackman, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. How are you, Kyle?
Excellent. We're talking a little bit off air, a little bit of a hectic day, but nonetheless, I'm glad to be sitting down with you and, kind of shooting the shit, because we have a lot of shared interests. So you were on the show actually before I ended up with this ring here on my finger back in November, you and your brother. And then I had some of our mutuals on, Connor Freeman, Pat McFarland, and Reed Coverdale, on to talk about the state of the liberty and anti-war movement. So I guess real quick, let's give you your solo introduction, because this is your first time by yourself on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Great to be here. And I understand you had to change a tire today for the missus, it sounds like. And I'll tell you, I've never seen another human being change a tire as fast as Reed Coverdale. We were doing a live podcast comedy thing up at the Shell, this really cool Liberty hangout in New Hampshire, and we were on our way back. The show was like 2.5 hours from our house, and we blew out a tire. And Reed happened to be driving near us, so we called him, and dude came over, man, and put the spare on. I swear it was just like a few minutes. It's like a NASCAR pit crew. So I bet you can relate to that.
Yeah. I hate doing it at home, but for anybody that ever needs anything, if they were in sincere need of help, I'd always be right there for them. And Reed's definitely one of those guys too. And I think that both you and your brother are definitely some of those guys as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We love helping people any way we can, man, within our means and what we can do. And that's really how the world goes round. And I agree with what you said there in your intro about decentralization and having things be local. That's really how we're gonna go on, I believe, as a society. If things do go the way of a lot of these like apocalyptic TV shows, or the way some people think. But so I co-host Jackman Radio with my brother Eric, who's been on here a couple times, that and I'm big into comedy and music and politics, and freedom and being left alone. Like Ron Paul says, I don't want to run your life. I don't know how to run your life. Why would I want to? And I don't want my life being run by anybody. So it's basic stuff you would think, but a lot of our political institutions and organizations within the government are not so keen on leaving people alone, as we know. So.
Yeah, dude, it's very, very unfortunate. And, I see it in my everyday life, as an automotive technician, as to kind of the arbitrary standards they set on vehicles. But, that's a whole kind of separate subject. But, yeah, you would think a lot of these kind of rules and values would be common sense to a lot of people. But it's not always so obvious that they are, which is really unfortunate. And one thing that I always admired about you and your brother, and I told you guys both this on the last podcast, is that you guys both have this non-dogmatic approach to political stuff. And I do look at you guys' attitude and perspective as like my North Star, but I am just way too easily, the bull and the red flag. I'm way too easily taunted, and I can't help but talking shit. I look at you guys all the time as kind of like a paragon of something to strive for.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that, man. That's kind of you to say that. And yeah, I mean, I'm 36 now. Certainly, 20-year-old me was a little different. I was a little more fired up, and I mean, I'm still fired up and passionate, but I'm just more like, hey man, people have their beliefs. They're going to believe what they want to believe, and we're going to have our disagreements, but that's fine, man. That's what makes this place great. That's what makes the experiment of America thrive. And, I think one of the worst things we've seen, especially in the last 3 years, is the censorship and not letting people have the ability to question narratives openly and have a discussion. Because if you can't have an open discussion about something serious like that, we're just trending in the wrong direction. So what I try to do with the podcast is have people on, just have open discussions, and let them talk as much as possible. Certainly I get excited sometimes, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you think of a question or whatever. But I just having conversations with people, and I'm not on Twitter. Eric's on Twitter. I'm sure you're on there with him, and he's he can drop some spice every now and again. But he tries to avoid the flame wars and personal attacks, and because most of those people on there, man, they're just anonymous trolls. You guys have your actual name and your face and who you are, and you're not anonymous. So we try not to be antagonistic. The only ones we're antagonistic to are the warmongers, but that's okay. They deserve it.
One kind of revealing event for some people was perhaps the Meghan McCain Happy Holidays tweet, and I know I definitely threw some bombs there, and I did have a tweet that I don't want to say went viral, but it definitely got a lot of attraction. I did call Tim Pool, who I see a use for him, but he kind of angers me at the same time. I called him a pussy because he said, "God damn, this is awful," or "This is fucking awful," or something like that to the Meghan McCain tweet. And then he eventually came out with a tweet and said, "Oh, Matt Walsh taught me to be mean to worse people." So I screenshotted that and put that, and that's when I called him a pussy. So that, like, sometimes the dunks are just way too easy, and
you got to go for it.
Yeah. So I've been told before that if you see a shot, take a shot. So.
I feel you. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. And certainly in my earlier years, man, I had threads on Facebook, man, and I've some of them come back up, and it's like, oh, that's cringe. But a lot of the political stuff is still consistent. I've supported candidates from all over parties and different. They disagreed on other issues, but for me, man, the shining star and the one issue that's always got to be consistent is anti-war and not nation building and invading other countries and being in favor of a militaristic approach for everything. So that's why I've supported anybody from base plant lady Jill Stein to Ron Paul and Tulsi. I mean, you were at the march there with Eric, man. You saw that coalition. That was like a dream come true, seeing that, man. Seeing all those figures together who have always, been against the wars and speaking out about the dangers of nation building and empire and surveillance too, really. I mean, you never hear about that too much anymore on the mainstream media.
Well, the only time you hear about surveillance is when they're referring to TikTok, which is just always kind of ironic because
it's China.
As you and I well know, you can't worry about the that certain country over in the Middle East that's doing it, or your own government. It always is under the guise of this is China doing this to us.
Oh yeah, and I watched. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. I watched most of John Stossel's interview with Mike Pompeo, and
I can't imagine.
It was pretty good. I mean, Stossel asked him some good questions, and of course Pompeo is just the ultimate China hawk. He's like the right wing answer of the liberals and Democrats with Ukraine. It's just like the same side of the same coin. But I think he's going to be running for president, and if he is, he'll definitely be up here in New Hampshire, and hopefully we'll be able to interview him. And we want to try and interview everybody, man. I mean, we sit down. I'll sit down with Liz Cheney if she wants to sit down. It'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you have a big old, poster on the wall of that beautiful LPNH.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or Ron Paul. She's like, wait a minute, what did I walk into here?
Are you guys actually going to ask me like hard questions? These aren't going to be softballs,
right? Yeah, no, I know. And actually, I don't know. I don't think we've announced this yet, but Eric and I next week are going to a dinner and an event that Mike Pence is going to be speaking at. So,
my God,
we'll be able to get to meet. You can have dinner and you get a photo with him. And I don't know I'm friends with the owner of the restaurant. It's actually a place where I play on. My band plays on New Year's, so I texted the owner earlier and said, "Hey, I'm coming. I'm looking forward to it." And she's like, "Oh, great." So we're not going to cause a scene or anything, but if anything, I'll try to, talk to his people and see if we could possibly get him on the podcast. I mean, why not?
Yeah, well, one thing that I kind of alluded to earlier with you guys' approach is a non-dogmatic approach, because as you said earlier, you'll support anybody as long as they're anti-war. And I see kind of like two sides of this coin, where you do have almost like a necessary level of gatekeeping to make sure that people are anti, all wars, because, the current thing is going to be China. But at the same time, you have to, pat people on the back or tell them they're in the right direction when they're going in the right direction. And what I'm seeing with some libertarians is that they're not willing to accept that, some people are just good enough where they're at and they're maybe moving over in a certain direction. There's somebody that comes to mind in particular that says, "Oh, well, it's too late right now to be anti-Ukrainian war," or something like that. But, to see the Republicans coming out firmly against all the funding and everything like that, I don't see that. I don't know how people could see that as a net negative thing. And when you have good left wingers who are good on China and they're coming out and saying, the same thing about like, hey, we shouldn't arm Taiwan, we shouldn't be putting bombers on Australia or whatever. I think that's a good thing as well. And if they're not perfect on Ukraine, well, then, over time you have to work with these people to help kind of win them over to our direction. So I know that's kind of a lot, but do you see there necessarily being a balance between kind of saying like, you're not quite there, or where you need to perhaps encourage people?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you show them, if they're willing to listen and hear your point of view, and you make your points, and it's not like an attack based thing, I think people can look at something and change their minds. I have seen that. I mean, unfortunately, we hear from the extremes, and there's a very tribalistic nature to politics, to left and right, Coke and Pepsi, and certainly on a lot of the big issues, both parties line up. I mean, they're just, they're for more government, they're for expansion of, the budgets, they're printing more money. I mean, both parties are doing that. So. But yeah, on a person-to-person basis, when you sit down with someone and you can just appeal to their humanity and talk to them, I think you can get some things across and potentially change minds. And I think that's how it's going to have to be done. I mean, I don't know. It's not encouraging, the $100 billion that is essentially just part of a large money laundering operation. And there was even an investigation that came out recently that showed, I don't know, 80 or 90% of that money didn't even go to, its intended use. I mean, obviously I feel horrible for the people of Ukraine. I mean, it's not a black and white situation. I feel bad for the people in Russia who are anti-war, who are being locked up, who are not, who are not allowed to voice their opinions on this, and who are being conscripted and forced to fight. But there's people in Ukraine who are being forced to fight as well. And Zelensky has done a lot of authoritarian moves. So, if you can explain to someone that this thing didn't happen in a vacuum, and it didn't happen overnight, and it goes back many years, and, treaties were violated, and Putin obviously felt, aggressed upon, and his border was being, I just say to people, hey, what if, China set up a base in Mexico and they had guns aimed at America? How would we respond? What would we think about that?
Let alone shelling over into Dallas, Texas or something like that, shooting stuff right over the border, or even in the situation of like, let's say there would be a disputed border, because that's exactly what it was. And some of these people were ethnically Russian, overwhelmingly voted to be part of Russia. I mean, this is a very, very complicated topic. And and as you were alluding to earlier, there is a very tribalistic nature to politics, where you have a lot of people on the right saying that this wouldn't have happened under Donald Trump, which to me just is absolutely ridiculous, because he tore up the nuclear treaty.
It never would have happened, Kyle.
Never would have happened. Never would have happened.
I could end this thing in 24 hours. Okay, Putin, I did a lot of strong things when I was in there with Putin, but one thing, he never changed, but one thing he didn't do was attack Ukraine when I was in there, okay? Obama sent pillows and blankets, I sent tactical deadly weapons. So, and the thing is, though, the king is part of this, though, man. He did, he did ultimately, he's proud of the fact that he sent deadly weapons, and so he certainly didn't help. Of course, the saying is, that he's touting, I didn't start any new wars, and, we ended the Afghan war. Well, that may be true, but he still certainly dropped a lot of bombs all around the world and led a couple of coups. So,
yeah, well, and see, that's the part that gets let out. And that's what's so frustrating, is because for people like you and I read Adam Fitzgerald and a lot of the guys from the Antiwar, Antiwar.com and the Libertarian Institute. I do believe we're kind of the truth seekers, and we're trying to make sure that the right information is put out there, because misinformation, and this revelation came for me through kind of like nutrition information, that misinformation really does hurt people when they're not given the full context or all the tools necessary to evaluate the situation before them. Then you're starting off on faulty ground, and therefore you may not be able to make accurate decisions or assess the situation that's laid out before you. And this is the problem when you have people saying that, oh well, this happened because Biden's weak. Well, what about 2014? What about some of the stuff that was happening in the early 2000s? The fact that there's a disputed border there. And like we were saying earlier, some of the coups and some of the sending the weapons in and all this other stuff. There's a very, very complex history here, but people have to know this so that way they can accurately assess what the situation is. But if you just tell people that this just happened because Biden's weak and history started on, what was it, February 24th of 2022, it's dumb, and it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, it really kind of just waters it down and puts it into, it doesn't really put it into any context. And if you tell them about Victoria Nuland and President Biden's statements about the Nord Stream pipeline, I mean, that's an act of war, blowing that pipeline up. Yeah. And Cy Hirsch did a really great piece on that. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but he has an anonymous source, but for that, and he's being criticized, of course, and he's not naming who his source is, but that's how he's always operated. And he knows people who are part of these operations, and he's he gets to know the operators and the people who are close to something like that. And his big thing that he broke in the late 60s or early 70s was the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Yeah. He did a great piece, I think it was either for the New Yorker or the New York Times, about Abu Ghraib. He's done a lot of really great work, but now the New York Times won't touch him with a 10-foot pole because it doesn't serve their narrative. Right. But I mean, basically his piece, that they had that thing in the workings for a long time, and Biden greenlit it, and you're not hearing Greta Thunberg talk about the environmental implications about that one, or Al Gore. No. It's interesting, it's the same thing with the train derailment there in Ohio. So it's unfortunate that everything is politicized, and whichever side wants to put a certain spin on it to fit their narrative and their ends. But I mean, it's crazy. We most likely we did it. We blew the pipeline up, and there's just it's just like a collective shrug.
Yeah. You would think that something like that were really destroying a country's infrastructure, a significant part of it too. You think that'd be, that'd make breaking news, that'd make headlines, but yeah, like you said, it's just a shrug. And really, like, the treatment of a lot of news by alt media is so frustrating anymore. And I've been talking about this. I've been, beating my head against a wall, because you do have people like Tim Pool or some of these other commentators who like to present themselves as neutral arbiters of information, but they do have a clear bias and let that bias out a lot, but they tell people they don't have a bias. So people assume that they're getting, once again, non-biased information, but you're getting one side of the story, not, the whole picture. And that's something that's just always been so frustrating for me. And once again, it's why I admire people like you and your brother and then Adam, because you guys kind of come at this and say, this is what it is. This is my perspective. This is the way I interpret it. And, this is, where we stand. I just hate this idea of presenting people information in a way that's very deceitful, because once again, as I said earlier, it doesn't help people, and people can't accurately assess what's in front of them when they're presented with information like that.
And that's what I always try to tell people, man. Just read everything. I read the mainstream stuff. I'll read CNN's take. I'll read Politico, New York Times, Washington Post. Then I'll look at what the alternative media is saying about it, and then I'll kind of read between the lines and kind of feel it out. And that's how I come up. Yeah, that's really how I come up with it. I mean, I really do try to read as much as I can about a topic I'm interested in, and I try to be as fair. And, I don't get everything right. We're only human. If I get something wrong and I realize it's wrong, I'll correct it and move on. I think that's a good way to be with information. It's not, it shouldn't be, you want something to be a certain way, or you want it to be right, and you need to cherry pick and fit the narrative for your own preconceived notions on something. And I think a lot of people can see through that. But like you said earlier, man, I mean, misinformation, people are, like the Q stuff, man, that just melted a lot of people's brains. And, it lumped in serious, credible JFK assassination research with, JFK Jr.'s alive, and there's, colonies on Mars, and, Trump's doing a symbol that's going to he's signaling he's going to eradicate the deep state. And so that a lot of people went along for that ride, man. And it wasn't good, because I think what happened was a lot of people who were not ever interested in politics or had ever read a book suddenly got involved very quickly and went into their own rabbit holes, and didn't stumble upon a lot of great information, unfortunately. But that stuff shouldn't be, obviously I'm sure we agree, there should be no censorship. Everything should be allowed to be out there, but you really got to use your own discernment. And I guess a lot of people don't have that, or they haven't developed it yet. So you just always got to try to promote the best information for sure.
Yeah, it's really sad, because you're seeing this with a certain treatment in a documentary that was put out. And I hate how just, how it's one side or the other, where it's either this treatment is population control, or it's, safe and 100% effective, and, you're never going to get sick again if you get this. There's room in between, and you could find data to support, really either which way. But, I try to present that to people as like, hey, this information I found. When people go far one side or the other, a lot of the times they don't have any of the information to back it up, and people just make these claims. They look at you like you're crazy when you disagree with them and say, hey, this is what I can verify. And now we're at the point now where people look at you like you got six heads when you give a source for something, or if you ask for a source, because once again, if what you're saying is right, you should be able to back it up pretty easily. One reason why I admire Dave DeCamp is when he's on Twitter, he'll always say what he found, and then he'll put a story right after that. Love that, because once again, you can verify what he's saying. But just people who just say this stuff, and then I've even seen people say, oh, well, you just know some things are true. Do you? Do you know some things are true?
It's just, it's commonly accepted. Yeah, it's a universal truth. You know that, Kyle. I know that. We all know that. Everybody knows
it.
Did you catch any of his CPAC speech?
No, I haven't yet, but I did see one where there's a clip where he said he was going to drain the swamp or something like that, and I just quote tweeted and put Trump campaign for Lindsey Graham.
Oh, he's going to drain a lot more than that, Kyle. He's going to drain a lot more than that. I got my knee pads ready. I got them ready.
Yeah, he was he was like, I'll be your vengeance, I'll be your retribution. It was like biblical fire and brimstone, it's like some kind of revenge tour. Chris Christie pointed out though that the hall wasn't full, and that's a sign that his popularity may be slipping. But I don't know. I think DeSantis will enter soon, and we're probably going to see a bloodbath. I can't wait to see it, man.
The fireworks. I can't wait. I can't wait either.
Greatest show on earth, man.
Yeah. Real quick, when you mentioned Chris Christie, it reminded me of the 2016 debates. One of my favorite videos ever was Rand Paul when he was grilling Chris Christie. Use the Fourth Amendment. Get a warrant. Get a warrant. Did you sign a warrant? And I know, you gave Obama a hug, and you know what? You can give him another big hug or something like that. Oh, it was fucking great. That was I don't know if you remember or if you watch those debates, but Rand Paul in those debates, he was fucking spot on sometimes. I'm like, holy shit, I'm surprised.
When they let him talk. Yeah.
Right.
He's like, everyone's up here name calling. I don't think the American people are interested in middle school tactics and name calling when we have Pfizer. We have Pfizer courts abusing their authority. Rand, I gave you a lot of money, boy. You're having a tough time tonight. And there's a lot of things I could say about Rand's appearance, but I've been nice. He's like, I've been nice. Pretty soon, I don't even know why Rand Paul is on the stage. He's at 1%. Pretty soon, he's going to be off the stage. Rand's over there just smirking. But it could be that Rand Paul may have been the reason that Trump didn't bomb Iran, because he was on the golf course with him. And he was telling him not to do it, which is, God, that's crazy. It's like Rand Paul and friggin' Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, who 20 years ago was a huge Iraq war cheerleader. So he was dead wrong about that and, serving interests. But he's really one of the only ones in the so-called mainstream that would allow RFK Jr. to be on, or Tulsi, or anybody to question the prevailing narrative. So good on him for doing that. Doesn't make me like the biggest Fox News fan in the world, but at least they're letting people go on like Scott Horton and hey, Reed went on there. That's awesome. So that's a step in the right direction.
Asking about earlier was just like there's a difference between the ideal and sort of stepping in the right direction. And when you see somebody like Matt Gaetz pushing for this Ukraine fatigue bill, that's a step in the right direction. We should congratulate that. When he's pushing to, I think his bill was to remove the AUMF in Syria. That's phenomenal. And I really don't know anybody that would really hark on him for that. But then you see him vote like to maintain sanctions on Syria, especially after this earthquake situation. It's like, whoa, what the hell's going on here, man? You were doing really good. And then, of course, CPAC and everybody's got a posture to China. And then he's saying all this dumb stuff about intellectual property and the fentanyl claims and the TikTok stuff. And it's like they're so close. If they would just drop this China stuff, I would be the biggest Republican supporter ever, because I agree with them on a lot of stuff. And like, it's good to see them anti-Iraq war. Now, I don't think that a lot of them are sincere about it. I think that it is mostly just because Trump said some of the right things, but who cares? The message is out there and a lot of the people agree with it. So let's run with it,
Yeah, you got to take the wins. Got to take the wins when you can get them. And it seems like these days, man, when it comes to freedom and not pushing us further into World War III, insanely enough, it's the Republicans who are good on this issue. It's like, whoa, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, who the hell would have thought?
It's kind of not. I mean, you're going to have your neocons and your ghouls. You're going to have your Lindsey Graham and Pompeo and others who are going to love any war. But yeah, it's crazy to see a lot of Republicans being anti-war now. And, a lot of Democrats or people who identify as liberal don't even want to talk about it. It just doesn't even. They don't even want to talk about it. It's very bizarre. It's unfortunate that people would put a political or an ideology ahead of the right thing. Of doing the right thing and being on the right side of history.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So we were you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the King versus Giga Chad for Israel, DeSantis. What are your thoughts? Because I'm thinking if Trump is the nominee, I think he'll lose, and I don't think there's any chance that Trump wins, and could totally be wrong. But I think if it's Giga Chad, then I think he wins like in a landslide, because he's got that fire and he's laser focused. When he's on, he's on. The only time I really saw him falter was in that debate with that old donkey, as he called him. I can't even remember.
Oh, Chris? Yeah, Charlie
Chris. Yeah, that was the only time he froze there, and that was like the only time I'm like, he might not do good against the King.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, that's where Trump is like. I mean, you were talking about earlier the 2016 primary debates; those were amazing, and he probably did 20 of those. So that's when he's at his best, dude. When he's in attack mode, he's having fun. He's up there. He's got nicknames for everybody, and DeSantis is just now kind of going into the national stage on a bigger level. He just did a big event in California, trolling Gavin Newsom, and he's looking good. It looks like he's down some weight. They got him dialed in. They got the makeup. I mean, he's. They got him, certainly they're prepping him to be presidential. But I think as far as the polls go, and I know, say what you will about polling, he's behind Trump right now in a lot of polls. But, that could go back and forth. But it's going to be a slugfest. I mean, one of Trump's biggest supporters was Sheldon Adelson, who was a big Israel guy, and he passed away, and his wife got all the money and inherited the political machine. She's now cozying up with DeSantis. So there are a lot of billionaires that had previously backed Trump that are getting in DeSantis's corner. And he's got the whole woke, the woke wars. He's just tip of the spear for that. But I really think he's your classic neocon at the end of the day. He's a Bush era neocon. Mike Preisner from
Eyes
Media.
Left.
Yeah. He did an amazing report on, when DeSantis was a JAG lawyer down at Guantanamo Bay, and his job was to supposedly advocate for the prisoners down there and make sure they were being treated humanely, and their concerns were being met. In reality, he was overseeing them being strapped to chairs and tortured they were doing a hunger strike, so they weren't eating. So they were basically, according to one ex-prisoner down there, they were force feeding them Ensure, and DeSantis was just there watching it happen, kind of not really doing much. So that, that's the kind of guy you're really looking at. But yeah, I mean, he not to be too long-winded on it, he could get the nomination, but I don't know. I still think the king has a lot of support, man. And if you see a lot more people enter the race, if you see 7 to 10 candidates enter, and a lot of them get 1%, 2%, 3%, all the king needs is like 27 to 30%, man, and he'll get the nomination. So he doesn't need, like last time, the clown car circus of like 16 candidates, however many it was. That really boded well in his favor, and I think it will again. So I think he could get the nomination, but I would tend to agree with your train of thought that he would lose to Brandon.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people think that the economy and everything's so bad, and they're not wrong. But I think a lot of people have this disconnect, and they don't connect that Trump's complicity in this, but also the fact that a lot of people just have this fatigue from the absolute hysteria, just 24/7 over Trump. And a lot of people, I think his major downfall was 2020. And when you're telling everybody how great America is right now, after, tons and tons of people just got completely annihilated through lockdowns, which weren't entirely his fault, but still to a degree he was complicit in, people felt slapped in the face. People of, like yours and mine generation who are struggling to pay back student debt and stuff like that. You're being told that it's the greatest economy ever and you can't afford to go out and buy a house. Like people feel like they're getting fucking punched in the gut, and people don't like that. So the younger people say, well, I personally don't agree with this, but they say, hey, Biden seems like he's more normal. He's saying he's going to bring us back to, when times are good. I'm just pulling the lever for this guy because he seems better than Trump. Now, once again, my personal opinion, I do think Trump's better than Biden, but I think just people didn't know, and they just knew what was going on right then. And they're like, well, life sucks for me. This guy seems a little bit more normal. I'm going this way. And I think people will do that again.
Oh, totally. I agree. I mean, even though Biden has clear cognitive decline, and there's clearly some issues going on, and not to be ageist, but the dude's he's an old 80. He's not like a Ron Paul 80. Ron Paul, who's 87, by the way, still sharp as a tack and still out there fighting the fight. Yeah. So there are certainly people who are in their 80s and even 90s that are still sharp and with it and still vital. And I think there's a lot to be said for someone older with their wisdom and experience being in there. So, a lot of people like to make that case for, for someone like Biden. Obviously, I disagree with. I mean, the dude was one of the architects of the Iraq War. When he was in the Senate, he had a very powerful position. I was either on I think it was the Foreign Relations Committee or the I forget which one it was, but he was the chair of that committee, and he had the hearings, and he had the authority to allow or not allow a debate about voting for the war. And Lincoln Chafee, the only Republican senator who voted against the war, wanted to have a debate about it, and Biden shut that down. There was no debate. And Biden voted for the war, and he was totally in lockstep with the Bush administration. Biden is also one of the authors of the Patriot Act. A lot of people don't realize that. So, those are the big issues that why I would never support him. But yeah, there was the perception, I think, by a lot of people, like you said, man, massive Trump fatigue. I still think there is Trump fatigue, but he could just squeak out the nomination again. But does he win the general? I think that's a lot harder this time around.
Yeah, I think DeSantis, if he runs, I think he will absolutely crush Biden, just because he has a lot less of that kind of hysteria around him, and he's a little bit more stomachable, if that's even a word, but he's a lot more easy to digest for most people.
He's more digestible. Yeah,
there you go. He just is a lot more appealing to people because he's a younger face. And, our mutual friend Reed had laid this out very, very well. I do think he's kind of like a right-wing Obama who kind of he's the shining star of the Republican Party. And he has
Reagan. Yeah.
Right. And he has a really, really good record to run on. And this is where he could really pound Trump into the sand. Is he said, hey, you completely messed up the handling of COVID. Look at my state and look at how the country went. And I mean, right there, it's undeniable. You can't argue with DeSantis on that. Nobody can, because he's really, really good at putting his finger in the wind and feeling which way the winds are blowing. Trump too, he had that in 2016. Yeah, but he doesn't have. I don't think he has it anymore. I think he kind of lost it, because I remember actually not even 15 minutes away from where I work, he brought out the Johnson & Johnson CEO. Dude, you could have heard a pin drop in that freaking arena. And I mean, just 2 years prior, where my band opened up for Steel Panther, I want to pivot over to this here in a second, but
nice.
Yeah, 54,000 people showed up chanting, "We love you." I mean, like rednecks in the middle of nowhere, people, in a town where one half is like the most ritzy motherfuckers you ever met, and the other half, maybe there's a collective 32 teeth. 54,000 people show up to cheer on for Trump. So I don't think that's going to happen again. But DeSantis, I think people line up for him.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of interest in him. He's definitely, now is his moment. I mean, this is his time to run in reality. Yeah. I kind of was thinking, well, maybe he waits 4 years. And I mean, that happened to Christie. Christie should have ran in 2012 and he waited, and then we saw what happened. But yeah, no, there's a lot of interest in DeSantis, but ultimately we'll see how he does on the debate stage, man. There could be a moment, man, where the king goes for the jugular, dude. I mean, he's quick on the draw. Like I agree though. He seems more fatigued. He has kind of lost an edge a little bit. Like he just kind of doesn't seem as fired up and excited about it as he was. So, I mean, a lot of MAGA people are going for DeSantis. So it's going to be very interesting. I think DeSantis is the only one who could mount a legitimate challenge to the king. So it's coming, man. I think that first debate's going to be in July or August or something like that. And I can't wait.
Oh, dude, I can't wait. Ron DeSanctimonious, Ron Meatball DeSanctimonious.
We got little meatball here. Look at him. He's just like he's ragu paste, Kyle. I mean, he's disgusting. He's over there, and he's awful. It's like, Trump was the one that created the meatball, though. The meatball grew off of his shoulder, and then look what it's turned into.
Yeah, well, Reed brought up a good point too, that it's going to be funny watching him debate all the people that he appointed and try to tear them down.
Yeah, Pence, Pompeo, Meatball, Haley. Oh, dude, it's going to get nasty. He's probably going to be so rude to Mike Pence too. And I can't wait to see that. He's just
the protesters of January 6th, Mike. I'm not going to say what they wanted to do, but they should have did it.
They said tough things. They said very strong things, and you didn't have the spine to do it. You pussed out, Mike. It'll be like probably the first reunion since then. I don't think he's seen the king. I don't think they've seen each other since January of 2021. I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow.
So, God, that first debate, man, the ratings are going to be through the roof, Kyle. You're not going to believe the ratings. It's going to be like Dallas meets American Idol meets The Apprentice, and people are going to be clamoring for it like you wouldn't believe.
Nice. Well, I guess we can put a little bow on that, because the other thing I want to talk to you about was your kind of musical career, because your brother sent me pictures. I've seen pictures of you playing. So were you like out of the womb, picking the bones for the babies, playing the drums with the bones for the babies? Were you beating the skins that way? Or like kind of what got you into music? And I thought like you and your brother were more into like classic rock stuff. But then when you're telling me you met Dave Bruckner from Gore, I'm like, oh my God. So I don't want to steal your thunder too much, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love all kinds of music. But yeah, I think classic rock and roll are kind of my main forte in area of interest. I love post-punk. I love a good pop song. So I mean, from a young age, man, I was always big on music. My parents had a record player in the living room, and they had albums. They had vinyl albums and I would put on. They had the Beatles, John Lennon, the Moody Blues. So I would just put that on and listen to it, and that's kind of how I discovered music. And then the first bands that I kind of discovered on my own and really liked was like Green Day, The Offspring. Okay. I was big into Michael Jackson when I was little. Eric's actually really good at moonwalking. We'll have to have him do that for you next time you see him. Dude, yeah. Eric's got moves, man. I got to tell you, he's a great dancer, and he's a very athletic individual. Even given his a man of his stature, let's say, he's actually we're both athletic, believe it or not. I mean, I used to be more, but yeah, music. I started playing drums in middle school, probably 7th or 8th grade. I think 8th grade. So I just, our parents bought Eric a drum set for Christmas one year, actually, and he didn't play or take to it, and I started playing, and that's kind of how I got into drumming. So probably I was 13 or 14, something like that. 14 when I started playing drums, self-taught. I had bands in high school, and we, did covers, tried to do some originals. And then in 2008, I was asked to go jam with 3 former teachers of mine, actually, that I had in high school. And I ended up joining with them, and that's my band, Northern Stone. I've been playing with those guys ever since. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, you know how it is, man. The gigs, playing the gigs, and then the adrenaline afterwards. Like, even if you get done at you're done playing at 11:30, you pack up. Even by the time you get home, you're still wired for a couple hours. That's usually what I find. I can't just go right to bed. I'm still pretty wired. So. But we for a regional cover band in New Hampshire, we've done pretty well. We've had some success. I feel very fortunate. We get hired for a lot of private gigs, which I love doing, and probably the 2 biggest gigs that we've done, we played the Pumpkin Festival in Keene, New Hampshire, which was internationally known. There was actually a riot that happened in 2015 or 14. It ruined it for everybody. They shut it down. They don't do it anymore. So we played that, and then we opened up for Recycled Percussion. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're New Hampshire based, but they had a Vegas show, and we opened for them, and it was probably 20,000 people. So that was pretty cool. That's cool to do that. And yeah, I love going to shows. I love collaborating with different people and checking out different genres. And as far as heavier stuff in metal, I don't listen to it too regularly, but sometimes you want to throw it on. You want to get something more aggressive. You want to get fired up. It could be Marilyn Manson. Certainly Cannibal Corpse. I think I was telling you we shot 2 music videos for them back in November of 2020, the week of the election, actually. And they ended up not using the videos. They went with another. So they had 2 different productions going on, and they went with the other one. So somewhere there is footage that we shot. I sent you a couple of the behind the scenes photos.
Yeah.
And the director is kind of still shopping that around to other metal bands. So hopefully someone will pick it up and it will come out in some form, because we had a lot of fun doing that. It's basically like a 10-minute short film horror movie that we were shooting for 2 of Cannibal Corpse's new songs off their most recent album, which I thought was very, very melodic. The guitar playing, and it was actually really catchy. I liked it. So that was quite an experience. And you mentioned Dave Brocky. This was funny. So I used to go to this thing in Worcester, Massachusetts called Rock and Shock, which is a horror and heavy metal convention. And they do the convention during the day where you can meet actors and celebrities and people in the horror world and get autographs and pictures. And then at night they have the concert kind of across the street. Lots of juggalos, fans of Twisted, I don't know what they have a name, but they're kind of similar to juggalos. I couldn't, it was hard to discern, but there was a cast there of the TV show Holliston, and I'd never seen Guar without their I didn't
costumes,
know what they looked like. I didn't know Odorous Youngus looked like without his makeup and costume. I was just talking. I just happened to be talking to this guy at this table, and we were talking about music. And I said, yeah, I'm in a band. We're called Northern Stone, and we're from New Hampshire. And he's like, oh, I'm in a band too. We've played in Manchester, New Hampshire. I was like, oh, what's the name of your band? He's like, Guar. I was like, holy shit, dude, it's Odorous. So yeah, he was really cool, and I got his autograph and got a photo with him. And sadly, a few years later, he passed away, but he was really cool. They're really nice people, man. People in the metal community and the horror community are the nicest people.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny because the stereotype is the exact opposite. And you know what? If you've been to a metal concert, you will never find a more loving group of people, because everybody just, you mosh, and as soon as somebody falls down and, they're going to get hurt or something like that, people stop. And the one thing, funny enough, that stands out to me, it just occurred to me. I remember the first time I actually saw All That Remains, I remember they stopped the song because somebody fell, and Phil said, hey, let's get this guy out of here to make sure that they're okay. And then shortly after, 500 Death Punch went up, and then he said, hey, Phil came out and he performed with an 105-degree fever, crushed it. And yeah, dude, it's just the metal community is so loving. And this is why I was a little bit panicked about some of the satanic panic stuff going on. I'm like, look, I know where this goes. And I grew up on heavy metal. Like if you find pictures of me when I was like 15, 16, 17, I'm the kid wearing the Metallica shirt with hair down to my chest and everything. And you couldn't get me away. Yes, you couldn't get me away from like the Gene Simmons, Gwar, you name it, all the heaviest shit you could possibly fucking imagine. I know those bands aren't that heavy, but still, like that is like my childhood. So like if you guys are gonna say this can't be played or this is satanic, like fuck you, dude. These are seriously the nicest people. And I play in a heavy metal band. Dude, my bass player is like the biggest Trump dude in the world. My singer voted for Trump.
That's amazing.
I'm guessing, and you know what? We talk politics all the time, and we disagree with stuff. But you know what? We still go out there. We have a great time. We up for fucking Steel Panther in front of over 1,000 people. And
That's
you know what
awesome.
we did right afterwards? We went and had drinks afterwards. And you know what? I consider this dude one of my like best friends. And who cares about the political stuff? Who fucking cares?
Absolutely, dude. I feel the same way, man. And when you're up playing, none of that even matters. It doesn't mean anything when you're playing a song and you're in the groove. And there's nothing better than that, man. That feeling when the crowd's into it and you're playing well and you're having fun. That's what it's all about, man. And it's sad to see that politics and differences of opinion have driven more people apart nowadays. Whereas before it was like it's like you said, hey, man, we might not agree in X, Y, and Z, but we're friends and we work on this project together and create something great and special and something that's artistic. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, anything that's really worth anything artistically, there's going to be some friction along the way, or there's going to be disagreements in creating it. And that's what really makes it good, though. I mean, it's if we were all believe the same thing, and we're it'd be boring. There wouldn't be. There wouldn't be that magic that exists when you're playing. But I was really bummed, man, during the year 2020, especially no concerts. I don't think I went. I don't know that I went to any concerts, man. And I don't go to as many as I used to, because of price and obviously schedule and just not being able to. But I'll tell you what, man. Last year I spent thousands of dollars on concert tickets because it had been like almost 2 years, man, and I went and saw. I saw Paul McCartney at Fenway Park. I saw a band I really love called Echo and the Bunnymen, who I had their guitarist on my podcast. Huge fan.
I saw that. Yeah, a coworker of mine loves them.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you got to show him that picture. But been into them, since I was a teenager, and I've kind of gotten to know the guitarist a little, and which is surreal. He's a really, really lovely guy. And an Irish singer who I'm going to see this weekend again, Gilbert O'Sullivan, who I also was able to have on the podcast, which was a dream come true. I mean, been into him since college. So, man, music is it's it just brings a lot of different people together, and that's what's awesome about it. And you mentioned Phil from All That Remains. I got to have dinner with him and Reed in December of 2021, and it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. It was cool because I brought my buddy Ricky, who I've known since middle school, who used to do some producing for our podcast. He's since moved to Texas, and he's a huge All That Remains fan, and has been, knew about them before I ever knew about them. So I'm like, hey man, we're having dinner with Phil Labonte. Do you want to come? He's like, dude, are you kidding me? So we let them chat for like an hour. Well, me and Eric and Reed were just like, having drinks and laughing, and it was cool. And he signed an autograph for him and posed for photos, and there were people who were coming up to him asking for autographs, and he couldn't have been more gracious. So yeah, he's a sweetheart. I mean, he's got spicy takes, and I love when he trolls and he goes for the jugular, but he's just a really genuine, kind dude.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's been my experience with meeting people through music at all times. Is just all the people are very, very kind, and every single time I've met somebody in like a bigger band, just like Adam D from Killswitch Engage. If you ever watch his, some of his videos or like how he acts on stage, it's so funny. I remember there was a guy crowd surfing in a wheelchair, and at the very end of the song, he's like, "You." No, I fucking love you. I fucking love you. Like, it's just, he cracks me the fuck up. And there was a video of him when Killswitch Engage played in Germany. And I remember he's like drinking a beer. He's like, does anyone want to take a shit on my balls later? Like, just off the wall shit.
Yeah, right.
But, I live for that.
Oh, yeah, dude. The being outrageous. And I don't know if you consider them metal. I saw Stained and Korn play.
Yeah, I like that.
Korn was awesome. I mean, when I was a kid, man, it was Korn. That was some of the heavier stuff that I like.
I guess you could call it heavy, but they brought it. I mean, those dudes are in their 50s now, and they can still. They were really cool, man. Jonathan Davis came out playing the bagpipes during one of the songs.
Yeah,
and yeah, it was an awesome show. So yeah, I love all kinds of music, man. And if it's, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff now is very overly produced for a commercial reason and doesn't have a lot of soul. But there's still so much good music out there, man. You just, I always love discovering new bands and new songs too. That's still something I really enjoy, and I enjoy sharing music with people too.
Yeah. One thing that I don't know if you know Tommy Salmons. I think Eric does, but
yeah, I know. I don't think I've ever been introduced to him or podcasted with him, but I know you guys have, and Eric has, and I think Reed is he a musician too.
He was at one point when he was younger, but him and I talk almost like every single day about just like dogs and music, and it's funny because we met through like libertarian podcasting.
Yeah,
but he researched a lot of like the globalist and conspiracy stuff, but the one thought that always occurs to me, there was this video of Dimebag Darrell from his DVD called Dime Vision, where he's in the bathroom, like just out of the shower with this big old camera strapped to his hand. He's just talking about like what makes you cringe, and basically just discussing how like to some certain people, that like slide of the hand on a fretboard make other people just go absolutely insane. And then other people are like, wow, that's just so cool to hear that human element. But like the interesting part of that is that that's human, right? Like my singer, when we recorded our 4-song EP, I can never get this out of my head. I remember he's sitting there, our engineer sitting there trying to like pitch correct our singer, and he just stops. He says, look, I can fuck with this forever, but like you're so spot on that I can't do anything with this. But what's beautiful about that is that she worked for that. That's her. And no one else is going to be able to sound like her. No one's going to be able to sound like me. But what's awesome about that is that we have our own unique sound, and no one's going to be able to drum like you, right? So yeah, that's just beautiful.
No artificial intelligence can ever replace that, man. You're absolutely right. And yeah, it has kind of a cold, kind of a soulless, vapid feeling to it when it's AI. It just doesn't have that human element. And a really great classic Beatles tune is the cover of Twist and Shout that they did. And John Lennon sang lead vocals on that one, and his voice was shot because he was singing all day and his throat was hurting. And they ended up using the last take with the last thing that he had sung that day. And that's the one in the final recording. And it's memorable, it's very memorable. And musicians, you just put your own touch on it, your own personal touch. And it is very unique.
Yeah, there's just always something cool about hearing some of those imperfections sometimes. Or like, the one thing that came to mind was if you're familiar with Lamb of God, but when they wrote the song Walk With Me in Hell, at the very end, they had Randy, their singer, run around the block real quick. So at the very end, they get a specific sound out of him with like the breathing and the way that he would sing it. So just like cool stuff like that. And when you learn these little tidbits and facts, it's just really interesting to hear how they incorporate that into their music. And, I don't think you're ever going to get technology to replace that. And that's something that's truly beautiful about music, and that, I don't think we'll ever lose. And we should always, be grateful for that and keep politics and stuff like that. Like, it's okay to have your political beliefs, and I'm interested in hearing people who play music's political opinions, but like, let's not get so dogmatic about, approach to music and politics and music together. Like, just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I agree. I think anyone who has they have a right to freedom of speech and to put their political views out there. But some political albums or concept albums that are political, they're not usually that good. I don't gravitate towards those ones typically. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if I agree with them, it's like, oh, that's a little cringe.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It has a life. It has a very, very finite life.
Yeah, exactly. It might not be timeless. I mean, concept albums are great. Obviously, Dark Side of the Moon just turned 50, and I love Roger Waters' views on a lot of stuff. Super bass, super truthful. But I do know a lot of people who are Pink Floyd fans and fans of his music that were very put off by his live shows. But me personally, I would go see him play live. I'd love the whole thing. But I can see someone who's not political, and they're like, man, I just want to hear the music. But he's like, if you're one of those who doesn't like my political views, you can fuck off to the bar right now. The show's about to start. So I mean that certainly turns people off. But that's kind of been who he's always been. That though is really kind of the thing. He's. I don't view him as someone who just grapples on to an issue, like an issue of the month, a flavor of the month type deal. I mean, that's really part of who he is. So I think that's legit. But yeah, sometimes it's just cringe when you see a famous person or a musician's hot take on something that they obviously have no idea what they're talking about. But hey, it's all good.
Yeah, man. And I agree with you. They should be able to have a platform. When I see people saying, "Oh, just shut up and play music," like, no, just hear them out. You don't have to agree with them. Like
right.
Ted Nugent's incredibly outspoken, but the dude's super talented. Like, let him speak. I don't care.
Hey, yeah, his freedom of speech doesn't bother me. And that's the thing. People are so bothered. Dude, change the channel. Don't look at it. Don't listen to it. I just don't understand how people are so worked up over shit like that. It's like Mike Tyson's like, if you don't like it, you can change your station. I think we'll do that, Mike. Have a nice fight. Fuck off. Tyson summed it up, man. If you don't like it, Kyle, you can change your station.
I'm here fighting all the time. Can I at least get a blowjob?
He's like, I sacrificed so much of my life. Can I at least get laid? I've been robbed of most of my money. I get a blow. He's like, are you talking out of turn again? No, I thought we were all talking. I don't normally do interviews of female reporters unless I fornicate with them. So you shouldn't talk unless you want to, I love Tyson. Tyson is a dream guest. He's a dream guest.
Well, what's funny is that I've watched both his appearances. I think he might have been on Joe Rogan 3 times, but like listen to him on there. I'm like, he's like the nicest, most humble guy ever. But the problem was people fucking sat there and goaded him and got him all fucking jacked off. And then he has a fucking temper, so he freaks the fuck out. Yeah. But like just when in a situation like right here, he'd be like the nicest dude in the world. At least that was my impression.
Oh, totally. He's you can tell he's really calmed down a lot and he's evolved in a lot of his thinking and. He's like, I don't want to hurt people no more, Joe. I don't like it. Like I back then I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to bite the earlobes. Now I don't want to hurt people no more. I'm just not interested in it, But he got into really good shape there a couple of years ago for that exhibition that he did. That was really cool to see that. He's still got it, man. I wouldn't want to take an uppercut from that dude. That's for sure.
That might be like the last uppercut, any of us ever gets. Like
that you ever take. Yeah, the next thing you're going to see, Punk, is the floor, But no, he's incredibly eloquent, and he's like, I just ate a bunch of mushrooms. I can't wait to see how this turns out, Like, he's like really like kind of like psychedelic now. I'm here for it, dude. I love it. I love Tyson.
Well, whatever kind of keeps him down on the ground and, happy and healthy. I know he was doing like a little vegan thing and then he finally turned around and kind of went back to a fuller diet. But, whatever keeps a dude happy and healthy. So, totally, and that's what I'm all for all people. And I think, you guys represent a lot of the same thing. Anti-war and then, leaving people alone and just being happy and not being a fucking shithead to people because it ain't fucking worth it, man.
Life's too short, dude. It's way too short, man. I've lost a couple friends in the last year that were my age, and they're not here anymore. And it's like, holy shit, that really hits you. And it's too short for petty bullshit. And if you don't like something, you can disagree. It's not the end of the world. And I think more people need to just kind of adopt that type of mindset. We'd probably be a happier place. But the media, social media, the television, man, it's got control over a lot of us. It really alters our emotions and our moods and what we, how we think about stuff. And most of it's just lies. It's just a sales job and it's just propaganda. So I just advise people shut the TV off. Turn it off. Dude. I mean, I like my entertainment like everyone else, but I know when I go into something, I know that it's this is a distraction or an escape, and you got to have that. But it's become the TV has just become a television and social media is we've like morphed with it. It's like in the future we're gonna be part machine. It's like we already are, man. We have this. We're like this now. This is an extension of our arm. This is like part of our arm now when you think about it. So we're kind of already there.
Yeah, man, it's sad. I guess a good note to wrap it on, something that you touched on there a little bit earlier about losing people. I think about this quite a bit because I do think about, some of the family members that I lost over the course of my life because I lost all my grandparents by the time I was, I think, 17 years old. I saw a quote from, I want to say it was Corey Taylor, the singer from Slipknot, when he was talking to Vinnie Paul.
He's got a great voice, by the way.
Yes.
I love that Stone Sour song.
Bother.
Bother. God, what a great song that is.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely. No, that's okay. He was talking to Vinnie Paul about dealing with loss because Vinnie Paul had lost his brother. Vinnie Paul, the drummer of Pantera, had lost his brother when they were playing in Damage Plan in 2004. And the thing that he said is, well, Corey, the thing you have to remember is that you're living for two now. You're living for that person. And I don't think any of the people that, have left us would ever want us to sit there and wallow in our own self-pity. They would want us carrying on for them and, keeping their spirits alive. I think that's the best way you can celebrate the people who are no longer here with us.
Dude, I couldn't agree more, man. That was one of the last conversations I had with my father. That's precisely what he told me. He said, you got to go out there and live and be happy and go live your life and do what brings you joy. And I couldn't agree more with that. It's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Shit hits like a ton of bricks, man. I can't think of a better way to wrap it. Mike, where can everybody find you, brother?
So Jackman Radio, Eric operates the Twitter at Jackman Radio. We are on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, and we have a YouTube channel, Jackman Radio. We also are on Substack, and we have a Patreon. If you would like to support our work, become a monthly patron at patreon.com/Jackman Radio. And man, we're just, putting out shows and writing Substack articles and getting revved up for the New Hampshire primary 2024. So you're going to see a lot more from us with that, and hopefully more candidate interviews. And, Eric may or may not be, bringing the Donald Trump character back to life at some point this year. Stay tuned for that. And there's going to be a lot of great things. It's going to be a Christmas. It's going to be an Easter miracle. It's going to be gone. The China flu is going to be gone by Easter, and it's going to be a miracle. We're going to stack the churches, and we're going to rev up the economy.
Hell yeah, Mike. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I was really looking forward to this conversation. It went just as great as I thought it would. So dude, if you don't got anything else, we'll close her out.
Absolutely. For those about to rock, I salute you.
Hell yeah, man.